conversation coming up. More on that later. And we just wanted to give you all, to encourage everyone to continue to use the chat in whatever way you see fit. Feel free to private message, to group message. Go
Definitely
wild.
flirt. Do what you gotta do.
Also pay attention though. Yeah, I think we have anything else to say.
I think, well, just I guess thank you so much for being here to celebrate our very good friend Kamala Puligandla and her amazing art and all of our other great friends. And I can't wait to get started. I'm just looking for the bios. Sorry.
And now Daniel will say a few words about Nautical.
Oh yeah, Daniel's gonna start.
Yeah.
Hi everyone, my name is Daniel Lisi. I am a book publisher here in LA. Yeah, I'm very excited to be celebrating Kamala's achievement. We held our very first submission competition for fiction books. I think it was 2 years ago now.
Yeah, it was a couple of years ago.
Yeah. Gosh, man. Yeah, time. And yeah, Kamala was the recipient of that submission competition, and it was I think something over 100 submissions we received. And it's been an absolute pleasure to be working with Kamala on Zigzags, and it's been a largely generative process creating this novel, and I'm very proud to have it. Aha, here it is. I'm going to be spamming the chat with it, with a link to where you can purchase it. It's available anywhere books are sold, so you can request copies at your local independent bookseller, or you can request copies at your library, and they will have access to it. And so I highly encourage doing that or purchasing it direct through the links that I will be providing. I'm very happy that this event is happening. Thank you everyone for your time tonight, and congratulations, Kamala.
Thanks, Daniel.
Okay, thank you, Daniel. Okay, so now for the readings portion of the evening. Our first writer is someone who's been a friend and a crush for exactly 10 years now. Yeah. One of my favorite people, vinh-paul. vinh-paul is a writer, a text-based artist, a tarot reader, and empath, and end-of-life doula focused on celebrating death through legacy work and funerals. vinh-paul likes to keep a minimal internet presence, true, but does occasionally update his Instagram, which I suggest you follow at Mystic Daddy, or Dade, excuse me, with an E at the end. You can also sign up for his newsletter debuting soon. Link is in the Instagram bio at Mystic Dade to read more about his musing, see pictures of what he's cooking, always something good, especially the cookies, or submit a question for relationship advice, which I literally just did 6 hours ago at 2 o'clock in the morning. Okay, vinh-paul, take it away.
Hi, thank you for that introduction. Yeah, let's just step into it. I'm actually recording this for Instagram as well, this reading. We'll see how it goes. We'll see if anybody follows it. So anyway, let's get started. I'm going to read from my novel project. It's just going to be an excerpt from one of the pieces, and I'm just going to throw you all in there. So let's just make it happen and see what we do. So, okay. You all hear me okay? Yes, thumbs up. Cool, thank you. Okay. At the age of 22, vinh-paul fell in love with an older woman whom he thought was obsessed with him. They met while taking business classes together at August Les Better Than A+ Learning Services. They had lunch every day on the grass, underneath a palm with fronds so perky it looked as if the palm were smiling. One Friday afternoon, while eating sandwiches made with peanut butter and Agatha Les homemade tasting cantaloupe pie flavored cantaloupe pie jam, Swan asked vinh-paul if he preferred to stand or sit while urinating. I just have this thing about men sitting while they're peeing, she said. think it's kind of sexy, don't you? Are you asking me out? vinh-paul asks. Swan laughed. Is that a yes? vinh-paul asks. Oh, you, Swan said. Your types are so funny. What do you mean? What do you mean my type? I don't get it. On some days they didn't talk much, and on other days they didn't talk at all. But every day, no matter the weather or the staleness of conversation, they sat together on the grass eating their lunches underneath that happy palm. Day after day, this routine, and vinh-paul was convinced that there was a connection between them. Why else would anyone hang out with somebody every day unless they were interested, vinh-paul thought. Why else would she be so friendly? Wrote in his journal that night, friendship, gateway to romance. 22 days before graduating from their how to use facsimiles in today's world of fast-paced telephonic computing class, Swan dropped out to pursue a career in dental hygiene, stating, I'm just more of a people person, you know? vinh-paul sent her letters via facsimile every day. Sometimes he'd send her poems he'd written too. Pages and pages of facsimiles, and Swan took vinh-paul's letters and poems as nothing more than a commentary on the absurd use of facsimiles as a modern tool for communication. On one facsimile, vinh-paul wrote, tried sitting last night, thinking of you. Swan facsimile back at quick lulls, cools. Unknown to vinh-paul, Swan had started seeing someone she thought was the one. Her boyfriend, Tang, told her he thought it was creepy how friendly she was towards someone obviously obsessed with her. Why are you talking to someone obviously obsessed with you? He asked her, to which Swan said, he has symmetrical preferences, if you know what I mean, so it's fine. And Swan continued their correspondence until her phone bill came and she noticed use of the facsimile machine had put her telephone cost into triple digits. Swan then sent vinh-paul a facsimile telling him they could no longer continue sending each other facsimiles because busy with dental hygiene school anyways, and good luck with everything, really. But vinh-paul didn't understand and instead thought she was playing hard to get. Thought that this was all part of Swan's game, so he continued to write. How school? Smelled any bad teeth lately? To write. Just making a PB and CPJ sandwich, or our favorite. To write. Started a new class at August Les. It's called S. When is it omitted and sometimes superfluous? The difference between plural and possessive and first, third person singular and simple present tense for everyday practical business applications. Then someone set the facsimile on fire. Amateurs. Missing you. To wait. And drew a smiley face every day until one day Swan sent another facsimile, a final one, telling him she'd taken a restraining order out against him, that his writing was too small and she couldn't make out the words he was saying, that those small words wasted all my hard-earned money. Bye. vinh-paul responded, his writing bigger now in all caps. Sitting regularly now, can we talk about this? Fax me. vinh-paul waited for Swan to fax him, to tell him that they'd see each other tomorrow, but Swan never faxed. vinh-paul felt like a needy man. It was all very confusing. He wrote in his journal, desire, not good for bedtime. On their fifth psychotherapy session, Susan Lele asked vinh-paul, have you ever fantasized about being in a relationship with a man? Once, when vinh-paul was riding the 22 eastbound bus on his way home from work, he saw black tape crevice between two seats in front of him. He pulled the tape out. The label had been shabbily peeled, leaving behind the letters R, O, C, N, G, H, E, A, R, Y, along with sticky translucent streaks of adhesive. Under normal circumstances, vinh-paul would leave items that didn't belong to him alone, but the bus was empty and it was the last run of the night, and due to what he would later rationalize as a lapse in conscientiousness induced by an impending need to urinate, vinh-paul tucked the unmarked tape behind the flaps of his pea coat and pulled the string for the next stop, 2 stops short of his regular stop, because he was, for reasons that only made sense to him, paranoid that the owner of the tape would be waiting outside for him at his usual destination. When vinh-Paul arrived at his apartment, he put the tape into his Oak Pine Authentic VCR, eager to decrypt the tape's missing letters by seeing what played, but the tape played nothing but static, just 20 minutes of static. Disappointed then that he'd walked 7 blocks home in the cold due to an overly active imagination, which he'd mistaken for destiny, vinh-Paul, aware again of his impending need to urinate, went to the bathroom and left the tape playing in the Oak Pine Authentic. In the bathroom, vinh-Paul sat down on the toilet and thought over the what-if possibilities of the tape as he felt a relief come over him as he relieved himself. While in mid-relief, his thoughts entertained the possibilities of what could have been on that tape, those endlessness of possibilities, family reunions, childbirth, the meaning of life, of the universe, espionage, the kidnapper's ransom, a recorded version of the wildlife special he'd watched a few days prior on National Geographic called From Mice on the Farm to Capybaras Along the Darien Gap, The Life of Rodents, the latter of which being a wildlife special purporting itself to be a celebration of all rodents, but devoted no less than 2/3 of its programming time praising the ingenuity of beavers and their oversized incisors. What's the big deal, vinh-Paul thought, about those teeth? Those teeth that make all beavers look like caricatures from a 1930s film featuring Paleys riding on rickshaws pulled by other Paleys pretending to be you-know-whats. vinh-Paul finished peeing, stood up, flushed, heard the low playing of a saxophone coming from the living room. The sound of that saxophone getting louder. The sound of that saxophone not quite like smooth jazz or blues, but moody with a hint of something bright and synthetic. "What's that?" he said. "What's going on?" And walked back into the living room. According to the pre-jerk-off montage playing on his Oak Pine Authentic television with chrome channel and volume dials that he still needed to refinish, Romancing the Altar Boy had the hottest stars of today. No more campy 70s fags with their mustaches. And, "Oh," vinh-Paul said, "wow." vinh-Paul watched the tape, wondered whom that tape belonged to and what he, the other guy, looked like. Wondered what he, the other guy, was thinking when he got home that night and frantically searched his man purse only to realize that his treasured VHS had gone MIA. Wondered what he, the other guy, must have said when he saw the tape missing. Was it something like, "Oh fuck, where's Romancing the Altar Boy?" Or was it more a veritable slew of crap and shit and fucking regret? vinh-Paul didn't know. vinh-Paul would never know for certain. All he knew for sure, though, was that the tape must have meant something to the other guy, since the tracking was completely off from overwatching. Especially that scene where the altar boy gets on his knees and receives what he thinks will be communion, except to the altar boy's surprise and vinh-Paul's, it was no flavorless wafer of a holy savior, but a mouthful of priest thrusting cock deep, and so much spit all over that cock, vinh-Paul remembered, down that altar boy's throat. It all seemed very strange to vinh-Paul, an act so visceral and private on display for anyone with a VCR to play. What perverts would watch this, he thought, as he spent the next 10 minutes trying to fix the tracking, only to give up when he realized it was a useless endeavor, lost to too many rewinds and nights of self-driven pleasure. It felt wrong. It wasn't the act of two men fucking that affected him, but the fact that the guy who owned the tape before him was so enamored by that scene that he couldn't stop beating off to it. vinh-Paul felt sorry for that altar boy, prayed for him, played the tape again, and played the tape again, and again. "Mr. Le," Susan Lele said, "are you still with me? I'll ask you again. Have you ever fantasized about being with a man?" vinh-Paul wrote in his journal, "Faith, quiet sin." That was it.
That's amazing.
I dropped my phone. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. That was great. I was just like loving all the crowd reactions. Thank you so much for that reading. I'm sure you all have questions, thoughts, affirmations, rebuttals. Maybe not rebuttals. For VPH, put them in the chat. We'll get into them later.
And that was like what a performance. Thank you for taking up all of the space on my Zoom screen. Incredible. Thank you so much.
I look forward to seeing my performance later.
We all do.
Our next reader is gonna be a treat. We have the wonderful Amanda-Faye. If you haven't seen Amanda-Faye perform before, you're about to get a treat. Amanda-Faye is a biracial Black Latinx fat femme dyke writer, comedic performer, and a Los Angeles native. When she isn't oversharing on stage, she can be found creating semi-relatable social media content at Failure Princess on Instagram, Twitter, and letting her dogs kiss her on the mouth, even though everyone keeps telling her that's some white people shit.
Reclaim it.
Guys oversold that a little bit. It's
Just doing my job.
This is only my second Zoom reading. I am sitting on my toilet, as I told some of you. We're gonna see how it goes. Using the squatty potty as a bench. Yeah, I have a squatty potty. Okay, I'm gonna read this. It was lunch period, and my purse was a yellow-brown plaid hobo. I know that sounds hideous, but this was the 90s, and it was cool to be a little bit hideous. My best friend Penny took the bag from me and gently dumped its contents onto the smooth concrete of the upper terrace where we always sat for lunch. I like that sitting for lunch is kind of a theme here. There was lunch in the... I feel so lonely. Okay, sorry. She flattened the pile and began to examine each item. We inspected each other's belongings like this often. It was an invasion of privacy, an act of intimacy, a way to pass the time. On this day, something was different. Your purse is boring, she said, dismissing it and returning to her turkey sandwich. Her words stung. What was usually in my purse that wasn't today? Well, there were no gossipy notes or drawings of teachers, no punk flyers, none of the generic Vicodin pills I'd been slowly stealing from my mother for recreational purposes or to eventually kill myself with. I hadn't decided yet. No new flavors of shiny scented lip gloss. Oh my God, my purse was boring. It was not a good feeling. As an adult, it's a struggle to keep the contents of my purse as exciting and useful as possible without giving myself a permanent back injury. I wrote this a few years ago. I already have like lots of permanent back injuries now, but I try. Sometimes I think about what my ideal baggage would be, the things I would want to be found on me by archaeologists if like a sudden unexplained volcano blast took me right out here in the middle of Los Angeles. The perfect purse would naturally be my favorite one. A big, soft, shiny, cherry red faux leather bag I found at a thrift store near Pasadena City College. It has a huge gold clasp that makes it look like an oversized novelty coin purse on a thin red strap. This amused me so much that I wrote a poem about it when I was in writing class at the college, age 19. I can't find that poem because it's probably on a damn floppy disk somewhere. Don't laugh. None of you remember floppy disks. But I do. But I still carry the purse sometimes. I would like to think that in my own hypothetical purse fantasy, my credit cards would be paid off and my wallet would be fat with cash instead of months-old lottery tickets I've never checked for winners. I'm also imagining a time in which my mall soft pretzel punch card is full and I'm about to get that free pretzel. But I keep losing it, and I think there's an app now anyway. I know for sure that my driver's license picture would be amazing instead of one where I look like I've been crying, because I was. My mom and aunt literally dragged me sobbing down to the DMV in Lincoln Heights to take the test when I was 23. I'm born and raised in LA. Since I was too scared and sure I'd fail. So in the current photo, my hair is in frizzy pigtails and my eyes are puffy and wide with surprise that I passed. My mouth is flat and pinched like Kermit the Frog because I started to smile, but a grumpy chola with a hickey barked at me not to right as she clicked the camera. In my fantasy photo, I've taken the plunge and have curly bangs again. My eyebrows are perfect, and I've finally mastered a sly, slight smile from years of selfies. This boozy kombucha is delicious. Sorry, I'm a little nervous. It's been a minute. I already said that. Okay. My dimples are miraculously the same size. I am wearing a V-neck. My perfect purse probably wouldn't have any drugstore lipstick inside. I'm broke, but I'm kind of a lipstick snob. I keep a few cheap tubes around though, because I hate my job and I don't like to wear my fancy makeup there. Okay, well, to be honest, I have at least 5 to 10 lipsticks in my purse at any given time because I love variety. And also because I'm really bad at remembering to take things out of my purse, which is how I accidentally carried a small baggie of magic mushrooms in my bag for like 3 weeks once after I nibbled a few at the beach over a holiday weekend. They came with me to work and to class and nearly on a flight to Mexico, but luckily I decided to change handbags. Federal law aside, I definitely think it's important to be prepared for an emergency fun opportunity. I also think any good bag has a notebook inside. I know everyone is supposed to take notes on their phone now, and I do sometimes, but there's nothing more satisfying in life than an old-fashioned handwritten list. If a curious party were to peek into my little notebook, they would know that I go to Palm Springs a shocking number of times a year for someone who doesn't make very much money. That's not true anymore. It's still true that I don't make very much money, but I don't go to Palm Springs a lot anymore. I guess none of us do now. Something to think about. Where was I? Oh, and every time I go, I create a new packing list called Palm Springs instead of just being smart and reusing the previous one. Anyway, the rest of my bag is basically a medicine cabinet. Advil, hand sanitizer, half a Xanax, an essential oil blend for digestion, 3 moonstones, and a chunk of black tourmaline. I keep a little bottle of perfume in there for going out and also a tiny bottle of silicone lube. Hot tip, sure, it's great for anal, but also works really well as a cheap hair serum and for thigh chafing. Of course, all this stuff means that even in my ideal scenario, my purse would be pretty heavy. Being interesting always is. That's it. That's all I got.
That was awesome. Love this.
Hilarious, incredible as always.
Truly.
Wouldn't expect less.
Now we
I'm
know
gonna
what
go to the bathroom really quick. I'm just saying that because I think you're gonna say.
Oh, yeah, go. Wow. Well, this, yeah, this didn't anticipate actually having to host it.
talk amongst yourselves.
In case stand up, please. Why? Phoebe, are you wearing a turtleneck? Stand up comedy. There's only one stand up in this room, and it's not me.
Oh.
I meant the Zoom room, not this room. Wow, I agree. Yeah, those readings were great. What else?
Great. Well, Kamala's back.
Okay, great. Thank God. You really made us work for this, Kamala. Is Chloe also gone? No, Chloe's there. Okay. Hi. Okay. Well, moving along to the next segment of the evening, we'll have our guest Chloë Bass. Is it Bass or Bass? I just realized. Chloë Bass.
It's Bass.
It's Bass. Great.
Isn't
Chloë
Kamala
Bass.
reading first?
Sorry.
Isn't Kamala reading first?
Oh, I thought you were in conversation.
I'm gonna read first.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chloe.
We can talk while you read.
You can talk while I read. Yeah, I'm gonna read first.
Can I introduce you?
Yeah.
Great. Well, for those of us who don't know, it is my distinct honor and pleasure to introduce Kamala, our guest of honor, who is a writer and editor in LA. She writes autobiographical fiction and essays on queer love and futures. AKA she steals from her friends' lives. It's true. Her novella called You Can Vibe Me on My Femme Phone is forthcoming in January 2021 from Co-Conspirator Press, and she is the editor-in-chief at autostraddle.com. Kamala is well known for her contagious laughter, her iconic hairstyle, and her easily undone heart. Zigzags is her first novel, and you can find out more about Kamala at kamalapuligandla.com. I'm so excited!
That was such a good intro. Thank you. Okay, hi. I'm reading from my book today. It's really exciting to read from an actual book because it feels really real. Like when you read from a Word document, I'm always like, oh, I should fix this and I should change this and this isn't set in stone. But I'm like, this is great. It looks like a real book. Okay. So I'm reading a flashback that's kind of at the front of the book. And it's when my character Anisha like first moves to Chicago and meets these people that this book is about. So I think that's all you need to know. It's called The Obvious Combination of Beef Stew and American Cheese. Richard had seen himself in me since the day we met, which was something I'd never been able to shake. At the time, Georgie and I had just moved into an apartment together in Edgewater. I've got a job as a cashier, she came home and announced one afternoon. It was Halloween that day, and the job struck me as a trick. How, I asked, where? It's a hippy-dippy restaurant with a store and a bar. They were totally impressed that I lived in China, and they said they liked my scarf. Georgie fluffed her hair up in front of the mirror and adjusted her pashmina. I start tonight. Everyone's so nice. They invited us to a Halloween party. Can you believe that? She asked. I need to wear an exciting costume that will also hide my excessive amount of nervous sweat. We eventually settled on Waldo's pregnant wife, and Georgie told me to stop by the bar at 10 when her training was over. Friend potential, I asked her. Oh yeah, high potential, she replied. I liked the sound of that. I'd come to Chicago in the first place because of Georgie. When she returned after a 2-year fellowship in Kunming, China, I wanted her to move out west with me, but she wouldn't. The fam is in Chicago and I can't leave the summer towns, Georgie insisted. This surprised me. My family had good taste and we generally enjoyed each other's company. But since we were kids, the idea was that my sister and I would strike out on our own to discover the world for ourselves and make our own place in it. My mom had made it clear that only in a severe pinch could I live at home after college. Georgie had grown up in Chicago and knew plenty of people, so I decided to move in with her. I didn't know anyone else. I spent my days on the computer, editing and writing inane articles about the kinds of skills one could expect to acquire with a vet tech degree, or where to find online courses in soil science. It was both comical and depressing to break down every career into a series of concrete steps so web readers would believe that if they just stuck to the prescribed path, they too could become successful neurosurgeons and filmmakers. 5 Steps to Becoming a Successful Writer was the name of one of the articles I'd been assigned that day. I'd had to put down my coffee mug in order to laugh maniacally for a minute. That night around 10, I showed up at the Heartland Cafe in my best rendition of beef stew. I'd taped construction paper vegetables to a brown shirt and fashioned a foil cap to look like a pot lid. As soon as I walked through the screen door, I was confronted with Georgie in her blue knit cap and striped shirt. Her palms were pressed into the counter, and she was blowing at the longer side of her bangs. I was impressed that she'd managed to keep her pregnant pillow in her shirt for her entire shift. What's going on? I asked casually. Oh my God, you scared me, she said, jumping back. I thought you were another customer, and I was going to have to tell you that we're closed for the night or that we cannot do the ginger dressing gluten-free. Hey, Nikki, she yelled over her shoulder, and a skinny woman with frosty blue makeup appeared. I wondered if it was a costume or if she always looked that way. Georgie, don't forget to take out the cash for tips. That's what this stock is doing over here. She pointed with a pen that she stuck in her mouth and wandered back over to the bar. And don't forget you have to do all of the credit card transactions too, she called and picked up her blue drink. That's the stack on the other side. Georgie stared at me with wild eyes, and I knew that I would be going to this party alone. I'm not doing well, she confirmed. I'll join you later. I walked over to a stool at the bar, and Georgie addressed the young servers who were taking off their black aprons. Hey guys, this is Anisha. We live together, she added. I ordered a whiskey ginger and looked up at the large dusty buffalo hat on the wall. The bar seemed like a standard dive. The vast beer selection was scrawled on a chalkboard, and an empty stroller sat idly in the corner. The wall behind the bar boasted a fantastic clutter of license plates and photographs of the Heartland across the decades. My dollar bills stuck to the surface of the bar when I paid for my drink, and I realized that this was exactly the place where Georgie was qualified to cashier. Hey, I'm Whitney, said a girl with very curly hair. She was writing in her receipt book and accidentally brushed my boob with it when she walked past. Oh, she grabbed my shoulder. I'm so sorry. I was struck by the contrast between the firmness of her grip, but how lightly the pen rested between her fingers. She paused to take a better look at me. Are you beef stew? She asked. Yes, I said excitedly. I am. I'm so glad you could tell. Great costume. I'm American cheese. Whitney gestured at the piece of yellow foam that she was wearing over her shirt. I made the flag bloomers myself, so they're a little funny. You're coming to this party, right? The food should hang out together. Naturally, I said. Good. Whitney added her receipts to the pile Georgie was working through and took the stool next to me at the bar. What are you drinking? She asked, which led to a conversation about our shared love of whiskey, temporary tattoos, and the boys section at Target. Whitney was the kind of queer who didn't look especially queer unless you were queer yourself, and that was something I always liked. She took me with her when the group headed down the street to an apartment where someone named Heather was going to give us a ride to the party. I found myself standing at a granite island watching a girl divide the last of a bottle of gin into a dozen plastic cups. She was wearing a glittery leotard that I very much admired. Hey, do you know who Heather is? I asked. I'm Heather, she said. I live here. You must be a new person. Why don't you take one of these drinks? Nice touch with the foil hat, by the way. That's when Richard walked in, sporting slippers and a bathrobe. He nuzzled the hell out of Whitney's hair, picked up one of Heather's gin and tonics, and sipped it elegantly, pinky in the air. He cocked his head to the side and watched me watch him. Who are you? He asked, as if my presence were a mild insult. This reaction was closer to what I had expected of the night. I tagged along to my share of parties and mooched off a number of friend groups, but I had rarely felt so welcome to do so. Whitney appeared just in time to offer an apologetic introduction. This is Richard, she said to me. Anisha, I said, shaking his hand. Richard raised his eyebrows at Whitney, then grinned at me. It's a pleasure. Everyone's been saying there's a cute new cashier at the Heartland, and you're about as adorable as a koala. Oh no, that's my roommate Georgie, I answered. He motioned between Whitney and me. So that means you two are new friends? As of 2 hours ago, I offered. Richard looked amused and smugly drained his cup. All right, well done. Then he moved on. I can't decide what to be tonight, hence this horrific nightmare. He gestured to his loungewear. I have some options, but I'm not married to any of them. In the end, Richard decided to dress up as a coke addict from the 80s. He wore an oversized thrift store suit, which Heather and her friend Amanda had apparently bought for him, and spent an unbearable 20 minutes applying Vaseline and baby powder to his upper lip. Right as the group was about to leave for the party, he ran off to his apartment, saying that he just couldn't bring himself to go out wearing a silver belt buckle and a gold watch that he needed to change. The car ride required us to jam into the back of Heather's car, but nobody else seemed bothered. Make room for me, Whitney said as she climbed onto our laps in the back seat. I had no idea where we were going or what kind of party we were in for, but I had to admit I felt I was in solid company. Heather was dressed as a glittery jazzercise instructor. Amanda was going as a businesswoman with an oversized cell phone. Her boyfriend Sam had made a cardboard and long underwear Batman outfit, and Whitney was wearing the foam cheese pullover with the homemade American flag bloomers. Then there was Richard. He annoyed me. His pinched face, his brashness, his goopy upper lip, and his less than inspired costume. I never expected to be friends with Richard. At the giant loft party, I watched Amanda and the cardboard Batman get close, while Heather flirted with an Alex from Clockwork Orange. Meanwhile, Whitney and I downed drinks and chatted up strangers. She also hardly knew anyone there. We jostled on the dance floor, sidestepping loud girls and roller skates, and I sensed a playful, glowing chord being struck between us. Her touch on my back was gentle when she asked me to get her a new drink, and there was a loose baby tacked onto the end of her thank you. In a haze, Whitney and I took a cab home together. I sat in the back seat, my hand on her thigh, her head on my shoulder, when suddenly Richard materialized in the front seat. "Play nice, girls," he called and winked as the two of us slid out of the back seat. Even as I followed Whitney into her apartment, I hadn't seriously considered that this is where the night had been leading. So often, these were the kinds of interactions that meant I'd made a new best friend. Richard, however, had known all along, and even Whitney was cool and casual as she poured me a glass of water. "You're welcome to spend the night if you like," she offered. Richard still brought up his presence in that cab from time to time. I knew something was happening there. Nothing even happened that night. I'd told him time and time again. I had a glass of water and walked home. But he knew I was lying, and I think he preferred not knowing exactly what to picture. Sorry. Of course, how polite and gentlemanly you are, Anisha. The truth of that night I kept to myself. It wasn't pretty, and it wasn't original. Not even Whitney would have remembered that she took both of my hands, led me to her bed, and pulled me on top of her. We were both still wearing our coats and bags, and even though I was straddling her, our fingers on each other's faces, I recalled the sensation that we were still so far apart. I was exhilarated by how sharply her lips tugged at mine. But as quickly as it began, Whitney's gin-soaked mouth went slack and lazy, and I pulled away from her. "Hey, Whitney," I'd said, holding her cheek in my hand. She'd mumbled and turned her nose into my palm. I jumped off the bed and chuckled to myself as I unlaced her boots and pulled them off. Then I adjusted my scarf, pulled up the collar on my jacket, and left her to sleep. It was too unexpected to take seriously. But on my walk home, I purposely attempted not to replay anything in my head, to keep the details fuzzy. I had an active imagination and a bad habit of falling in love faster than was comfortable for anybody. It was then I had to acknowledge that Richard, the crass stranger with a goopy upper lip, had seen something familiar in me, some part that I hadn't entirely recognized myself. He would never be able to fully explain, but I got the impression that he'd been in my position before, and I wondered what else about me he knew that I didn't yet. And that's it.
Well, the silent.
We were just laughing about the silent claps there.
I love the silent clap. I'm like, you could see it, you could feel it. Like,
Energy.
Still so loud. Yeah. Thank you so much. That was so great.
If you haven't already got your copy of Zigzags, do so immediately. And I believe it's time for the next part of our evening, which is
wait, no, what is the next part?
is it you and Chloe in conversation?
Yeah.
We got it this time.
What were you gonna say it is?
We get to hear so much more from the brilliance of Kamala, joined by Chloë Bass. Chloe is an artist who lives between Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn, and St. Louis, Missouri. She has a different cat in each location and loves the same people regardless of where they are or aren't, and can be found working occasionally at chloebass.com. And I believe we are in for some dynamic discussion between Chloe and Kamala.
You're right.
The cats do not know about each other. The cats do not know. So
Wow.
don't tell them. Don't tell them. Hi, Kamala.
Hi, Chloe.
What are you drinking?
Well, so when we started this call, I was really worried that I wouldn't like be able to make another drink for myself after it began.
It's real.
So I made 2 drinks, and the second one, in order to stay cold, because I like don't have, I ran out of ice before this, I put a popsicle in it.
Mhm.
So this is mezcal with some blood orange soda and a lime popsicle melted into it.
I love it. I love it. I like my drink is in a special glass, which I don't think anybody will be able to read because of the lighting. So I have to read it to you because it's a glass for you. It says President's Month in appreciation of a job well done. It's from 1963. So cheers in appreciation of a job well done, President's Month. Cheers, everybody. Cheers.
A job well done. I'll take that. Thank you.
Yeah, and it's signed by somebody. I can't read the signature, but underneath the signature, it does say president again. So it's
Someone from 1963,
from
presumably.
1963.
Cool.
So yeah, I mean, it's funny because we had a rehearsal conversation for this conversation, but now I'm disinterested in talking about any of those things. So
I think
let's
that's
talk
what
about
happened.
other
So we
more
got to
different
do
types
that.
of things.
Okay, what?
What?
What? I cut you off. Keep talking. Keep saying the end of the thing that you said.
Oh, I was saying we should just talk about other different types of things in addition to some of the things that we rehearsed.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Well, where should we begin?
So here's a thing, because this is a book that you wrote like not a long time ago, but in sort of like a different phase of life. What does it feel like to return to yourself as a fictional character, but also yourself then?
It's weird, but I also like it. I think it's okay. So the very first little book party that I had was actually a little mini party themed 2010 that Phoebe threw. And it was really weird to think about 2010 because it was 10 years ago, which in my life is like a really significant 10 years of my life. And it really is extremely different. But then I was like, I don't know. A lot of the person who is in this book and who like, it's like so many layers of myself, right? It's like in some ways it's still the same because I started writing this book about myself when I was like 2 years past the moment. And then I just kept writing it. So like I got further and further away from the moment. But I feel like it just allowed me to further distill myself into the version that I am in this book. So there are parts of it that are super weird because I'm like, oh yeah, like what? Like I'm at this like a Halloween party with like this random man who I became friends with. But also I'm like, there are so many thoughts and observations and like ways of moving through social circles and having conversations that are like exactly the same. And it's kind of cool to read those and recognize them. Though I did have moments when I was like editing the last time I edited, I think before I submitted it to Notacult, where I was like, there are parts of me that are like embarrassed about things that have happened in here, and I just have to like let them be in order to be like authentic to that version of myself, which I think I did a pretty good job of.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate that. And like, I think that there's a lot of ways in which I don't really make work about myself, but like, I do make work that involves some of my experiences. And there are ways in which you're like, I wish that was someone else because I want this experience, but I don't want it to be mine. And that feels really familiar to me. And you're just like, well, it's either not have it or like, I don't know. So here you go. So yeah, I feel that. Phoebe's requesting the top 5 most embarrassing things. You know, you can go there or not. Give us like 2. Can we have 2?
Yeah, I mean, I don't. Okay, I'm gonna have to like look through. I'm like, let me think about this.
Can you quickly read your whole book and tell us the 2 most embarrassing things? Thank you.
There's like a whole bunch of embarrassing things. I would actually imagine that Phoebe is probably like better acquainted with what they are than I am, because I like forget my embarrassing moments as soon as they happen, so as not to hold them with me. But I do think that I think there's some embarrassing moments, just like things that I did and said and was into. Oh, like I went to Pitchfork in the book, and I also went to Pitchfork in real life. And not that like that itself is totally embarrassing, but like that I had like an emotional moment at Pitchfork is like slightly embarrassing.
Mm-hmm. But I think there's also like certain levels of embarrassment that it's like internal to you, it's like a deep cringe, but then like externally, people are like, that's not that bad. And like, I think that this actually relates to what I want to ask you, because I sort of have divided stories up into different categories that I can graph with my arms. And I mostly like doing this because I can graph it with my arms. So this is still tips you can have. Okay. So if this arm is like stories that are like hard to tell and stories that are easy to tell, and then this arm is like stories that are hard to hear and stories that are easy to hear, right? So there's an intersection of these graphs of like telling and hearing. Okay, so here's my arm graph. And so like, where would you say the things, not just in this book, but like generally, where are you trying to fall in the intersection of like what you think will be easy or hard for you to tell and what you think will be easy or hard for us to hear?
This is such a great question. Okay. I think that I'm aiming for things that are, I mean, this sounds like really shallow, but like easy to tell and easy to hear. And not like that, like I will not approach a subject that is harder. But I think I like it to be, I mean, like ease is like a part of who I am. And so I like to infuse that into the way that I tell stories, which aren't always the easiest thing to hear, but I like them to feel that way, if that makes sense. Like I like to create, I think that part of my work is like creating the sense that it's easy to tell and hear, even if there's a whole bunch of work behind it.
I think
Is that
that's
a good answer? Is that like an escape answer?
But no, I have so many questions about that too, because it's like, what is it about you or about the world around you that you want it to appear easy even when it isn't, right? And like, what does that kind of do for you as a person, but also as a writer?
I don't know. I think sometimes it's intentional, right? Like I'm like, oh, this is then easier for everyone else to access. So like sometimes I think stories that are easy to tell are not always easy to hear. And so you do have to change them so that they can be easier to access and like easier to hear. So I think that what you're sacrificing on some level is like, I guess like a sense of, I don't know, I don't believe in like realness or unrealness. So I'm like, I think it's like you're like changing the entry point to it. So you like come in at a different place. You come in with different information. So what does that mean about like myself in the world? Like, I don't know. I think a lot about things a lot before I go do them. I think I like generally have like a whole network and web of things that I'm working with before I'm like picking the point at which I'm gonna like have someone come like in, if that makes sense.
Kind of. I mean, like, elaborate on that. Because, like, yeah, definitely, like, the things that are easy to tell are not necessarily always easy to hear. The things that are easy to hear are not necessarily always easy to tell. And, like, those mismatches are the things that I'm kind of interested in fundamentally as a person.
Yeah.
But also, like, I do think that there's something to be said for like building a world, right? Like if we talk about queer futures, like building a world where we sort of want a lot of things to be seen or appreciated, but then also simultaneously trying to produce a lot of ease for ourselves or for others, that like sometimes those things are hard to put in the same place.
Yeah. I think that's true. And I mean, I don't know. I think that this book is different than some of my work that probably I would more say is about queer future. I think this was like, I don't know, Emily, who I know is on this call, interviewed me recently. And we sort of talked about how a lot of the conflict, the inner conflict that I didn't recognize was happening at the time in this book for this character was that the world is not very, like the world that she's in is like not very queer. And that's like showing up in so many places in so many different kinds of ways. And like, that's like the huge chafe that's happening in like this entire world that she's in. So I think that like, did that appear like that's like the book is about that, so I don't think that like everything in the story is like about ease in that sense, but like how it appears is like a bunch of really small ways that sort of just like build up over time. So I don't know where that where that falls on the graph.
I mean, not everything falls on a graph. Like, just because I can make a graph with my arms doesn't mean that that actually encompasses the entire world, although I wish it did. I truly do wish so. But no, it's not. Wait, Emily, are you the Emily that has really cute cats?
Yes.
Oh my God, your cats are so cute. I receive cat content. So yeah, okay, returning back away from cute cats, which I can talk about forever, but that's not the subject of our interview. Why are you sitting so far away?
Because I like to put my feet up on my coffee table, and then my computer has to sit on something else. So I don't know.
It makes sense. It's actually what's cool about it is it's like slightly filmic and I'm into it. Like I am mostly just opting to sit in a really comfortable chair and like did not decide to coordinate anything else about the room or what I'm wearing or my lighting. So I appreciate the commitment to like you being in dark colors on like a green couch and kind of far from us, but also trying to be really close to us. I'm into it.
I can get closer. Do you feel like this is like a problem?
No, I really mean it when I say
Because I feel like this
love
is
to
just
see
like
that.
not a great, like I don't love this. It's like a lot, and I have to hold the computer. I don't like
Don't
holding
do that. No, put it back. Put it back. It's perfect. Drink a popsicle, put the computer back. Everything you're doing is correct. Okay. So in terms of the book, you know, you talk openly about how like you're often cribbing from your friends' lives, and we also know your own. And I'm curious, like in having this out in the world, what people's reactions have been, or sort of how you felt like you had to talk to people in advance, or anything.
Well, I
like
should
that.
have talked to people in advance, but I didn't. I don't know. Okay, so I feel like what's weird about this book right now is that like when I wrote it, I imagined that when it came out, I would still be like pretty close with most of the people who I stole from their lives. And we're still friends, but we're not like close. And
It's
I
not
do
queer futures.
what?
It's because it's not queer futures.
Yeah, I mean the book is also about kind of in a way how we like couldn't be friends anymore. So I do think that like I didn't like call everyone to be like I wrote a book about how we're not friends anymore. Like check it out. It's really cool. It involves a lot of personal things that happen between us. I didn't do that. So I don't really know yet because it hasn't been out that long. I feel like both Goldie and Phoebe have like written to me and told me like about like what sort of struck them about the book. And I think that there are ways that I mean yeah, like it is fiction, but it is very much based on like the feelings are real and like the context is like, you know, made up. So I do feel like I'm curious to see what people are gonna say. I am not like I don't know, like we were gonna talk about this where like you were gonna tell me what you thought about being in my stories.
Yeah, I mean, I can. Is that now?
Yeah, do that now.
Yeah, I mean, okay, like I'm flattered to be on air as a makeout queen. That's great. I'm never gonna say no to that. I couldn't put it on the internet because I'm also interviewing for a job right now, but when I'm done interviewing for the job, I will put it on the internet. But I know that people are like, people who I don't know are like very up in my internet right now, so I'm being a little careful. It's interesting. It's like I don't remember the first time. Well, I don't probably know the first time that you put me in something that you wrote. I don't remember though the first time that I knew that you had, and like how long I had known you for at that point, and I don't remember. But I will say that there is something simultaneously like illuminating in a horrible way and very flattering about having somebody turn you into a character in any circumstances, right? And like that can be true for, oh man, now it's going to just be like church bells. So you'll hear those too. But I think like the illuminating and horrible part is that it's like one small moment that really stood out to you or to whoever your main character is that's kind of being recounted, and not a lot of other stuff. But it's like what anybody chooses to remember or notice about you and like what really sticks in your memory is not necessarily always what you choose, in the same way that like you can't really choose if someone loves you, you can't really choose how someone loves you, even if they do. And so it's like a humbling, lack of control, simultaneously flattering experience, at least for me. You've never, like, you've asked me a few times to read over something that I'm in to be like, is this okay with you? And like, I don't think that there's ever a circumstance where I would say no. Partially because I trust you and I care about you, but partially because it's like so clear that they're your experiences and not mine. So like, what am I saying no to at that point? So yeah, I think that's most of it.
I think that's a really good point. That like, I mean, I do my best. I mean, I also like, I think I choose fiction because I think I can only portray, of course, the things that matter to me and how they happen to me. And that to me feels like fiction. And then it's like a weird thing to say, but like that my life is fiction. But I think it's because it's me deciding that like this is like I am making the world that happens. And I do think because of that, a lot of times I choose things that, yeah, like, sure, I remember lots of things, right? And like there are lots of things to choose from. But I think I'm often choosing the things that make sense for the story. And like everyone's character is not totally them. They're like, as all characters, like a tool for the story. So I do think that like in some ways I'm like, oh, that's kind of like bad and I should be cognizant of that. And other times I'm like, that's okay. That's sort of just like what happens. Like that's sort of how people come into your life and like they play certain roles. And like obviously that role is different for me than it is for you.
I think turning anything into narrative is fiction. Like even turning history into narrative is fiction.
Totally.
All of that stuff, right? Turning deep interiority into narrative is fiction. Turning, a story into just the clarity of the story is fiction, right? All of it. And so, yeah, I understand that very much. And also, I think even within your writing, like this book is fiction, and some of the other things that you've written are essays or are personal essays, or I don't think you use the word memoir, so I'm not going to use it for you. But like, I do think that there is anyway, like a deep distillation of clarity that you're trying to get to that is impossible in everyday life. And so like figuring out how to wrap your mind around that impossibility, whatever you need to call it to get there, is worth it to me.
I mean, that's like, yeah, that's real. I thought about it a lot. I mean, what you said about history also, yes, like it's fiction. It depends on who you ask and like what do you decide to include and what's important and what is like, I don't know. This is also something I talked about, Emily, but like where you decide to put an end on something, like when you decided that it was over, also highly changes everything that came before it.
Yeah. And who's saying it and what you know about them or don't. Right? Like when we read Zigzags, we don't know a lot about Anisha at first. You learn it through what she does. And like you learn it also through her reactions to what she does. But I appreciate sort of entering into something not knowing if you can even trust is like one way to put it, but like if you can even agree with the perspective that someone comes from, even if they're saying something that you understand to be true. Right, like the perspective that they come from matters. I think if you're understanding something as really true, and like how much you can kind of go with that. So, yeah, I appreciate that as well. And like that's where I do feel really inclined to separate the character from you personally, because I don't have any experiences with her, and I have lots of experiences with you.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, I do think I separate myself from her in the sense that like yeah, like I don't know. It is really weird. In some ways, I don't remember the things that happened at this time because I only remember the book version that I wrote. And so there's like whole parts of actual things that happened that are now replaced with this book for me. And so like, yeah, I don't even know. I'm like, yeah, I guess we're different, but I've like decided that Anisha's version of things is like mine for that period of time.
I get that. And there is something to writing something down in general. You're like, well, that's the version now. That's what my brain is going to do now. I like locked it for myself. It happens to me too, for sure. How are we doing on time?
Sorry, what?
How are we doing on time? I'm just checking. I have different ideas for what to do next.
Oh, I think we're doing great on time.
Okay. So I wanted to ask you, like, if you are anything like me, there are some questions that you get asked a lot and a lot of questions that you get asked never, that you're like, how come no one asked me that?
Okay.
I'm wondering, like, if you can put forward one of those questions, either to us as a group about the book or like to yourself, but like, what is something that you think is being left out and what people ask you about this book?
Okay, well, one of the questions that I have is like everyone who knows me now, I think like knows me in a certain way. And I'm like, what does everyone think about Richard? And I guess like not even just like Richard, I guess it's like everyone. It's like, is it surprising to read about these people who I once felt like extremely close to? I guess that's a question that's like more for friends than for like random readers. But I am like, that's a question. Other questions that I don't get asked often are like, I think that, well, one thing that I really like in both in books, but also like particularly in queer books, is about like party scenes and social settings. And like, I really like writing those, and I just don't read enough other stuff about it. So I'm like, also, if people have like things that they want to tell me to read, that's also nice. Or people want to ask me questions about why I like parties, that's also okay too.
I mean, why parties?
Wait, that's why parties?
Why parties?
I love parties because everyone who goes has something at stake. And even if it's that you wanted to like have a like you even if you think that you have no expectations, like everyone has an expectation at a party. And I love to uncover what those are and how they're like always in conflict with somebody else who's at a party.
And you know very well that I'm terrified of parties.
I
I'm like
know you
deeply,
don't like parties.
deeply afraid of parties. The thing that I like about the pandemic is that like most of my biggest fears have been stricken from the record. I'm very
Like what? Like what are like what?
like I can go to bed whenever I want. I never have to wear pants. There are no more parties.
I like that pants are like up there with it's like before parties.
No, because I already said parties. Parties are one.
Okay.
And there's no more gallery openings. Oh my God, thank God.
Okay.
So I'm curious if you wrote this book again now, is there anything that you would do differently or anything that you would want us to know differently as readers?
Yeah, well, okay. So also yes to Paul. Wait, what? Okay, never mind.
Lots of party information. It's important.
Party information.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh yeah, Polite's Form of Immortal Girl is the only other book I've read that has as many party scenes as I would like. But things that I would change now, I think I wrote it, even at the time that I wrote it, I was like, oh, I'm so wise now. Let me put some like editorial spins on like what happened before. And like, let me tell you how misinformed this little character is, like very lightly. Like that was my whole take. And now I know like even more how misinformed this little character was. And also I know more, like the story is clearer to me. I think it's sort of like if you could turn the contrast like up, like it's just much more like clear and crystal to me, like what the conflicts are, why they were that, and like where they're located in each character. And I think if I wrote it again, it would be a lot easier for me to be like, this is what should have happened in this scene. And I sort of like that this is a picture of me like figuring out what should happen in scenes, because like I don't even still totally know. But it's very much like me, like going through scenes and being like, oh, in this party they're gonna talk about this, and then in this time they're gonna talk. Maybe this should happen. Like, who hasn't been in a scene in a minute? Let's put them together. So I think I'd have a little bit better idea of like what things should go in what order, but not really. Like, I mostly have written short pieces for like ever, and like only recently was I like, oh, I like I'll write like really long short stories, and only recently have been like, oh, I should like pull them out and turn them into like big projects, because that's what people are interested in, apparently.
Big projects?
Yeah.
I mean, what are you interested in? Like, seriously, it's a flip question, but seriously, like, what are you most interested in your writing?
I think I'm interested in like little scenes. Like, that's what I'm most interested in. And I think that like my favorite pieces are like the one that someone dropped earlier, like the heart piece that I made is a bunch of little scenes like woven together. And that's like my like best place. Like I love that. I like to put together little scenes from different times with different people in them and like make meaning out of them. And I enjoy that more than being like, let me make like a full complete narrative and at the end like all the pieces will fit together snugly and make sense, because like that is not my experience of the world and I don't know how to do that.
So it seems like you're less interested in fiction, right? And that you're more interested in like the way that things happen and the way that how things happen don't always add up or go in any line that makes sense, in any box that makes sense, which I think is true. And like, I don't know what people are interested in, but like for the most part, I think that people recognize when something is real. And so whatever it is, like that's the style for it.
But I think it's interesting that you're saying that's like not what you think of as fiction, because to me that is like that, like all the tools and techniques of fiction are that.
I've never written fiction, so I don't know. Like, talk to me about the tools and techniques of fiction.
I do feel like you should talk about your work and like what, like how, like your work is like both abstract and concrete. And like, do you think of it as a kind of fiction or not?
Sometimes my work has concrete in it. That was exciting. Last September, before the pandemic, I got a man with a concrete mixer for a project. I was so proud of myself. I've never been more proud of myself. I loved the concrete mixer man. Yeah, so I make stuff. I don't know, what do I do? I'm an artist who literally concrete, yes, but sometimes it's also like more metaphorically concrete. So I make work about human intimacy. I come from a performance background, but now I make installations and sculptures, and I write a lot of words and essays and things that appear on other materials like plexiglass and put signs in public parks, and I don't know, I'm kind of all over the place, but I think like the part of my work that you want me to talk about right now is that a lot of it has sort of reflections on personal experiences embedded in it. And they're sort of very short pieces of text, but I never really say if they're my experiences or not. They're just experiences that feel personal when you read them. And so people assume that they maybe know a lot about me or feel very close to me from seeing the work. And then like I'll be on a panel or in a conversation like this and I'm like, I didn't say that happened. I just wrote it in first person. And so I think that there's like a lot of tricks that you can play in terms of stuff like that. But again, like if there wasn't something felt in it, then people wouldn't necessarily, even if you write it in first person, like you can't trick people that easily all the time. So yeah, for me, there's like an element of fiction by not admitting who the narrator ever is. And by not trying to turn something into a linear narrative, which means that you never have to reveal who the narrator is, as long as the narrator or whoever the voice is in the piece is somebody that people feel like they want to come closer to instead of step back from. So for me, that's really been primary.
That's really cool.
Yeah, I think like what I admire in what you do is that like you're kind of doing both. Like you're telling us who the narrator is and getting us to come closer through a lot of different things that I think are on the long list of things that you make appear easy, but are actually quite difficult. And I wonder sort of what some of those like substructures or subways of understanding are.
What?
Like what is underneath there that makes everything held up to be easy? What allows that ease?
I think that some things are like, I think some things that I do are just easy for me. Like it's not easy, like it's easy for me to just like tell a thing as it is and not worry about it.
Mm-hmm.
Is my word choice like perfect? And I can get that way like if I want to, but like generally I'm not. And I was like, I've been making this list recently of books about friend groups. And I was looking at, when I was writing this book, I was reading this book called How Should a Person Be by Sheila Heti. And I was reading some of the reviews of it. And she's just like, this playwright, and I think it's Toronto. I don't know. She's in one of the Canadian cities. And it's just like a lot of scenes between her and her friends. And I read a review that was just like, this is just a bunch of people talking and like not doing very much. And like, I don't really know, like the writing is lazy, but like still there's this like somehow you're like drawn into the story. And I was like, that's what I'm into. Like I think that like some of it is easy because it is, like some of it appears easy because it is easy. And I think that you can turn it into something that appears a different way that feels like rigorous, but that also then like that's like a whole different process. So I don't know. I'm not sure like what all like the sub structures are. Like I guess there's a lot of like sitting around and thinking or like replaying things in my head or like writing little scenes all the time in my journal. But like I'm not sure that there's like, you know, I'm not always consciously doing it. So I think I don't fully know. It's like a mystery to me.
I think that what you're talking about is grace, right? That is a certain type of grace that is hard to come by, but amazing to find. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
On a job well done, appreciation, 1963.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you for talking to me on Zoom.
Literally anytime, but not on Zoom preferably.
Right. Okay, I think we were gonna have a Q&A. Like if anyone wants to ask questions of me or Chloe, Amanda-Faye or vinh-paul, or also NK and Ashley, you can do that. And if you also don't have questions, like that's okay too.
We can just linger for a second.
What? I have questions.
For who?
For vinh-paul. Can I
Huh.
ask them?
Yeah, please.
Okay, I'm really curious, like, first of all, loved your reading.
Thank you.
That was fantastic. When you read about, I mean, like similar questions that were like asked of me, when you read about yourself, like, do you think of it as a different person than you, or are you just like, this is an extension of myself? Because I'm like, who is this vinh-paul waiting for this fax?
Yeah. No, that's a great question. Thank you. I definitely live in a fictional world, I think, in my regular life or in my reality, but also definitely in fiction. And so all of my writing, especially, I really love this idea of bending ideas of what's real and what's fake, or what's real and what's a delusion, I guess it's actually a better word. And I really want readers to think that these versions are me, or maybe they're not me, but the not knowing part is sort of the exciting thing for me, since I really enjoy, I think, vinh-paul as a character that has been really prevalent in this larger book project, and parts of this character is real and parts of this character is, or as in parts of this character is obviously me and a lot of it is not. And so I think in this reading itself, if people walk away thinking that this was 100% memoir or nonfiction, then cool, I'm into that too, because why not? And I think my writing in general is always sort of operates in that way. And you mentioned this earlier, and we've talked about it a lot too in our own conversations, but the idea that we can sort of blend these versions of ourselves and our sense of personal reality in our work. And that's what makes fiction so much more fun, because writing the truth or writing nonfiction for me concretely is just not as exciting.
Okay, well, I can understand that. I think I have a really similar question for Amanda-Faye. Like, do you pretend that this is you? Like, are you being you? Or is this also a performance version of you?
I'm always being me. I don't know how to not. Someone please send me a tip about how to not. No, I was actually just thinking about, because I tried to log into my live journal from, like, I wrote on live journal from like 2001 to 2005, and I tried to log in, and if you don't log in for 10 years, then they purge everything. And I'm like, God damn it. I know, it's gone, all of it. Like, that's like what I think of as my 20s, sort of just like gone. And I wrote in it so much, and I'm just like, shit. And there are a lot of things I remember, but there are things I'd want to read, obviously, just for, you know, extreme laughs, but also to mine some content and fill in some blanks, because I've had so many drinks since then. So I'm just like, wait, should I like fictionalize this and kind of make it that? Because there's a lot of stuff to write about in that time, but I just don't really know how to do that. But that's a really interesting question. Yeah, when I think about it, when I write about my past self, I feel very much the same. And I know there are like important changes that have occurred and whatever. It's the only part I like about getting old is like being somewhat wiser. But I'm also like, yeah, it does feel like I'm still the same person. Yeah. So.
Do you think that's also true in your memes? It's always true in your memes, yeah?
Yeah, every meme I make about diarrhea like just happened.
I know. I was like, I've been reading these memes for a while. I think I know something from you.
Sometimes I try, like if I want to post content, I'm like, okay, what can I make up today that happened? And I can't do it. And that's why I'm not like super active. I like can't really bullshit, which is a very bad quality for someone that's trying to be visible ever. It's nice to be able to bullshit a little bit, but you're seeing the car crash in real time every day.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't know. NK and Ashley, do you guys have anything else?
Prepared.
No, we don't.
Well, should we like close out then?
Wait, I have one question. I was trying to step back, but I'll step up.
Please do.
So your pieces about loneliness hit me like a ton of bricks.
Ooh, okay.
I guess I'm just wondering, I don't know when you wrote the heart piece, but how is your journey in relationship to loneliness going?
Oh my God, this is such a great question. Okay, so I feel like my relationship to loneliness, like, it's like super ongoing. And the first two pieces that I wrote about it were like particularly rough times for me, which is why I ended up writing about it. And I think this time when NK and Phoebe approached me to make a piece for the heart, I was like in this moment where I was actually not like super in the feelings of it. And so I got a chance to look at it more from a story perspective and be like, oh, like what makes sense? Like what relates to each other in a cool way. But while I was doing it, it definitely like brought up feelings of loneliness. And it was at the beginning of quarantine. So I was feeling like extremely isolated. And I think the journey has been that I've gotten like, I wrote this piece in Auto Struggle that was about how I wanted to like be more in love with and attached to my loneliness. And I think that's happened in a lot of ways, honestly, just because it's had to happen. Like you can't see people, you can't be in groups. And I think in the beginning of quarantine, I was really resistant to that. And now I'm like kind of into it. But I'm also like in a new relationship. So I'm also like, the loneliness has been like the bottom floor of the loneliness has been like cut. So I can't like come to you and be like, I'm now like fully embracing my loneliest lonely of moments. It's not true. But I do think that it doesn't leave, like I said, like it doesn't go away entirely. And I do, oh my God, especially when the seasons change, like at fall, the way the light changes, like leaves me with these like massive depths of longing and nostalgia that I just like don't know what to do with. And so I have been like noticing that lately. But also I think it's like nice to just like feel it and know that it doesn't mean that like my life is like over or that like something is terribly wrong with me, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it definitely does. And when something you said actually brought up a follow-up question, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So I'm in therapy, obviously, and my therapist says that every grief brings up every past grief, and I am wondering if that resonates with your loneliness as well.
Yeah,
and
totally.
Every loneliness brings up every other loneliness.
Yeah, I think they're all connected, and I think that's why it was really easy for me to make this piece, because I could just have like open up my journal and it's like, here's the way that I've connected every loneliness I've ever had since I was like 12. And they're all like connected in this like one long canal of like my grievances of what it feels like to be alone. And so, yeah, totally. I think that every time I dig into it, I have like a new piece to add on top of it, but it is all like the same little thing that I'm building with it. So I guess in some ways, it's sort of like when I get stoned, I like get in touch with a different version of myself. And when I haven't gotten stoned in a while, I like miss her. And so I do sometimes feel like it's like that, where like I'm like, oh, I haven't like felt this particular lonely grief, and I like miss that version of myself who's in it. So sometimes it does bring me back, and I like to like wallow in it for a little bit.
I love that. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for asking that question. Wow. Okay, well, I think we might be done unless anyone else has questions.
Questions, thoughts, any other reflections from the evening? This chat has been so fun,
I
everyone. Thank you
know.
I need to go back and read this chat.
I'll save a transcript for you.
Yes, and also reports on vinh-paul's lamp. I really want to know about that too. Well, thank you all for coming. I feel really loved and celebrated. Thank you so much.
Get your copy
Get
of
your
Zigzags if you
copy.
haven't already at notacult.media.com. Great.
Thank you for all of the readers and everyone coming to celebrate Kamala and her brilliance. This was so good.
You're all so wonderful.
Also,
Thank
so
you, Kamala. That was amazing.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm not muted. I had a great time as well.
Good. I'm glad. That was, I was wondering.
Yeah.
Should I flush my toilet? Should that be our outro?
Yeah, that was beautiful. I haven't. Also,
Is that your end meeting for all?
I'm down the toilet. My exit.
Oh, hi, bye, Maureen.
Bye.
Hi, bye. Well, everyone, yeah, you can linger or you can make your way out. Either way, we're gonna
I am trying to go hang out.
The way the Cranberries linger. Let's go back to the outro.
That's an amazing song.
Yeah, I know, I love it.
Okay.
I'm all about pining. This is
we
my
hit
whole
it.
I unironically pine.
Amazing cover of "Linger" by the Cranberries.
Oh, we should do that. We should make a cover of that.
I have to. Do you have to?
I was hoping for like a Kelly sister performance. We kind of
Get the barbershop quartet.
Don't let it fade. It's just your attitude. You can go.
We're gonna like serenade you out.
Yeah, I don't know. And I'm in so deep. This was so fun. Kamala, congratulations.
Thank you. Honestly, it's so good to see you two. I feel like I haven't seen your actual faces.
I know that's why I'm staying.
Where's the after party at? Like, I'll meet you.
Well, I was gonna go hang out at Vin's house.
Okay, cool.
We can zoom over here.
Shall we meet you there?
Yeah, whatever you want. I don't know.
I'll see you there.
Okay.
Oh yeah, come over. Whoever wants to, whoever's COVID free,
I haven't
come
been to
over.
your place yet.
Oh,
I can't.
COVID free. Okay. I think we're good.
All
Okay,
right.
I'm gonna hang up then. Just let me know.
Okay.
Good night, everyone.
Meeting. Bye.
Bye. Bye. You guys were the best part.